Pleasure is your birthright, and we all deserve to have pleasure. And we prioritize so many other things, work, family, home, and usually we put ourselves last. I believe that when we heal ourselves sexually, we will heal so many other parts of our life.
I think you gotta have a dream.
The School of Greatness.
Really? Yeah.
Please welcome Lewis House.
What's the number one thing that ruins relationships from keeping a thriving, desirable sex life? What would you say you hear
The
all
number
the time?
one thing that keeps people from thriving with their sexual relationship is communication. That is not, if couples do not talk about sex and they don't prioritize their sex life and they just assume it's always going to be how it was during the honeymoon phase, which is not realistic, it's going to fall apart.
What if it's uncomfortable to talk about?
Well, that's the point. It's always uncomfortable to talk. See, here's why I will always have a job. People are always going to listen to the podcast and call in with questions, is because it's not comfortable for anyone to talk about sex, because we don't have role models of people talking about sex. We had zero sex education. Most people I speak to after 15 years had, and if they did, it was inaccurate. And we feel we somehow there's all these things that we've learned about sex that are untrue. And one of those is like, if you have to talk about sex, it means that there is a problem, and that's when you should just call it quits, because we get attached to those early phases of the relationship.
Or it's just like this explosion and fire connection.
It should always be fireworks. It's never always fireworks. So everything, and if we don't talk about, and so yes, it's always uncomfortable, but that's why I always talk about, I mean, a lot of what I do is teach communication around sex. I mean, yes, I can give you all the tips and all the positions and all the things. We could be here for 16 hours. But at the end of the day, how do you even have that conversation that's terrifying and hard and uncomfortable? And
how does a woman who's been married for 5+ years to their husband have the conversation when the sex life is dying or about to be dead?
So how does the woman approach it?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll tell you my 3 T's: timing, tone, and turf.
Tone is everything.
Tone
for
is
men.
everything.
For women also.
For everyone.
Everything.
Because here's the thing. Let's start with tone. You never initiate sex. You never want to have sex with me. How come you don't, go down on me? Why don't you do all the... And so the second anyone does that, whether it's a business in the boardroom or the bedroom, you're going to get a defensive reaction. So your tone has to be curious and open and light and collaborative. So our tone is, hey, I realize we haven't talked about our intimate life, our sex life lately, and I realize we've never talked about it, babe. So let's just, what are some things that have been working for you, what not? And so that's part of it. I can circle back to we can actually do a conversation. So that's the tone. The tone is never aggressive, hostile, blaming. Then you have the turf. Now, this might surprise you, because most people think that you should talk about it when you're in the bedroom.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I just had sex and we're already in the bedroom. But the bedroom, I believe, is sleeping and sex. Not to have deep conversations, but we usually think, well, if sex is in my mind right now, we should talk about it. Like, wait till it's removed so then you can actually have a productive conversation. Because most people I talk to, I say, they call in my show and like, I've got this problem. I'm like, okay, have you talked about it? Yeah, I did. I let her know that where were you? And it was after sex. And they don't remember. Our minds are in an altered state. No, because of the hormones and the chemicals that happen with arousal and orgasm. So outside the bedroom, in a place, here's some tips for this. It's like you want to do it in a place where you are, maybe you're having dinner, you're having a glass of wine, you are going, here's the other thing. Since it's so awkward, do it when you're going for a walk. Because this way, this is a great cheat.
You're not staring at each other, you're looking
your eyes, you're not looking at each other, or in the car, on a road trip. I won't even make you look in your partner's eyes at this moment, but then you can be like, so babe, I realize we haven't talked about our sex life, right? So that's timing, tone, turf. That's what you got, right? Did I hit them all?
Timing is...
Oh, timing, no, I didn't, I missed timing.
That was turf, yeah.
I got excited. Timing is, here's an easy way to remember. Don't do it when you're halt, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. You are chilling, you're hanging out, you're in a really good space. That's why being outside in nature, or you're going on a road trip, you're in a good place. You're having dinner, you're having a meal, the kids are sleeping. And I also want to tell people it is not a one-time conversation. Another one of the myths around sex is like, oh, I had the sex talk. Like it's no.
And now we all of a sudden understand. Yeah.
Nothing. We know nothing. So that might be your first conversation is, you know what, I realized after these 10 years, 5 years we've been together, we haven't talked about it. And it's so, as I hope you can agree, it's important. And I realized lately I feel that we haven't made a lot of time for it. I'm not sure why, I'm thinking, I've been listening to a lot of people I'm always like, blame me. Say you were listening to this podcast. I was listening to Sex with Emily, and she said maybe we should schedule sex. And I can get into that too, but we should, or maybe we should just, I don't want to be the only one driving this. So tell me what could be a great solution, or why do you think we're not having sex? I think it's because I've been really tired. I'm overworked. What do you think it is? And then you can problem solve. But what do you think we could do? We could schedule sex. We could plan things. We could, and then the challenge is a lot of things can come up from there. Well, you haven't been listening to me, So this is why it's not a one-time conversation.
Yeah.
And then you go from there.
What is the main reason that men stop having sex with their partner after a long period of time? And why is the main reason that women would want to stop having sex with their partner after a long period of time?
What's interesting, Lewis, is that we always want to split this by gender, and it would be so much easier if we could. Men do it because of this, and women do it because of this. And what I've found out is that you cannot divide this on gender lines.
Same thing for both?
Same exact
Really?
Reasons, yep.
So what's the reason then?
So the reasons are, I could tell you that there's some male skewing things.
Yeah.
For example, there is some truth to probably what you're thinking, is that, men want variety, or that it just gets to be sort of stale and it's not exciting anymore. But I hear that from women all the time.
Really?
Yep. That they just sort of get bored with it. But typically they stop having sex because it gets boring, and then resentments build too. So usually there's an underlying resentment. Something's happened. They've built up contempt. Well, once you get to contempt, that's a really hard place to come back from. But there's resentments. It's maybe it's they thought because one time they told their partner they wanted to initiate more, and their partner didn't. Well, then they hold that against them. They use sex as a weapon. They withhold it from their partner. I'm not gonna, we're not gonna have sex. So there's the resentments. There's you get bored because you don't talk, you don't mix it up, and you don't do different things. It's also because some of the top reasons why they're not having sex is lower. There's always a high desire partner in every relationship and a lower desire partner. So
someone who desires sex more.
There's always someone who wants more and someone who wants less. And unfortunately, those people never match up.
Really? Mm-hmm. So what do you mean?
That's why it's so hard. You can't just say, but there's a lot of different, because it could be hormone. Here's the thing.
So you're saying there's always someone who wants it more than someone else.
Pretty
They're
much.
never at the same level.
No, and that can switch. You're like, I really wanted it, but then I got really stressed. So another reason why we don't want sex typically doesn't even have to do with our partner. It could be because we're really stressed out with work. What I hear a lot from men is when men are really I'll give you some gender things here. When men are really stressed about money or finances, they're worried about, work. It's like they've been castrated, honestly. Because if you think about the masculine, in many cases, they're like, oh, I have to make a living. I have to be the man. And then if you got laid off from work, you don't know how you're going to pay the mortgage. Sex is you are shut down. Sex could be the last thing on your mind.
You don't feel sexually charged. You don't desire yourself. All these things.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the reason why. So another reason why we don't want sex is because we're not feeling good about ourselves. So if you look at it holistically, it could be about an emotional reason, a psychological. It could be physiological, biological, your hormones. For women, our hormones change over time after childbirth. If you're on certain medications, that could also be a reason why we don't want sex. So it's whenever I dig deeper, it's typically not even about your partner per se. There's just always so many factors. It's like saying, do you feel healthy right now? It's the same thing. Oh, well, my exercise is great, but my diet isn't. Or I'm really working out, but I'm not lifting weights. Or, so it's like sex, it's a puzzle that you have to look at all the elements. It's really hard.
How do we simplify it? How do we just relax and allow the desire to flow for the rest of our life?
I think that's a great question. And I think how we simplify it is we we keep talking about it. We keep checking up on it. We keep saying, so where are we at now? And you set realistic expectations. So I'll give you an example. Like when a woman gives, let's talk, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have children, or they've gone through this, or women in perimenopause, or just hormonal things. So let's say you wanted sex all the time before you got pregnant, and then you have a baby. And for many women, their desire doesn't come back. Now they go to the doctor, they come home from the hospital, and the doctor typically says, oh, you'll be fine, you can have sex in 6 weeks. So much of the medical system and how we treat women and women's health is so inaccurate. You come in 6 weeks, yeah, maybe you'll feel a little bit better physically, but your hormones are all over the place. You're exhausted. You just birthed a human out of your vagina. And you're supposed to get all sexy and slinky and want sex. It's just, so that could be a thing. So then even setting expectations. So I think another important thing is you talk about it, but you also set expectations. Like right now, babe, I'm not feeling it. Let's just say that it's not gonna be as frequent. But also the way we define sex is through intercourse, like PV sex. I'm talking about heterosexual couples. Penis goes into vagina. But sometimes we just miss intimacy with our partner. So sometimes it could be, let's cuddle. Like I'll give you a back rub for 20 minutes and you'll give me a back rub for 20 minutes. And then we'll see where it goes. Or we take sex off the table for a week and we're like, we just sort of do it like we did in high school. We kind of bring back that energy and that connection. So it doesn't always flow. And I think the problem is it will never flow. Just like your health, just like nutrition, your spiritual practice, your religious practice. It is the same exact thing. And so the bill of goods that we are sold, that this perfect sex life looks a certain way, and you're always hot, you're always turned on, you always want to rip your partner's clothes off, doesn't exist anywhere for anybody on the planet, not even me. And I've been studying this for 15 years. And I started this because I was like, I don't ever want to be in a relationship where it just seems horrible to be with someone that you don't want to have sex with. And I thought, how do I unpack? How do I figure that out?
Yeah.
And so now I know what to do when I'm in a relationship, but I still sometimes don't want it all the time. So let's just knock down that, and let's just say, to think that it's always going to be in flow, and you're always going to want to have sex with your partner at the same rate, the same time, the same positions, your desires are going to be the same as your partner, it's just
Never
setting yourself up for failure.
Never going to happen.
Never.
So it's learning to be flexible, understanding, having greater communication with your partner, not having this fixed mindset that it's got to be a certain way all the time.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to let yourself down.
Yeah, set yourself free.
Do you think, is sex more physical, psychological, or spiritual in your mind?
I think it's all of those. And when we think it's only one thing, that's another way we get into trouble, because we don't, yes, it's physical, but for many people, it's a spiritual experience. It's all about connection. And here's the other thing, when we talk about communication, I don't just mean like, hey, let's talk about sex, why aren't we having it? It's like, what are your desires? What turns you on? What are you into? What's the most, great place for couples to start is, what's the 3 most memorable times we've had sex? I'll write it down and then you write it down, not with other people because that gets messy, but in our relationship.
5 years ago in that car with that other girl, it was so hot.
That girl went down and it was crazy. Oh my God. You're like, oh shit, that wasn't you. That's bad. But once you start to kind of unpack, maybe I had a woman call into my show a few weeks ago and she said to me, it was very similar. I was married for 15 years and we don't have sex, we have kids. I mean, this is literally the question. So I'm glad we're talking about this. And she said, and I asked her, I said, well, what's the most memorable time you had sex? She said it was like in 2000, it was New Year's Eve and we were on the dance floor and we had sex on the dance floor. And she was like, I'm like, that's hot.
That's
I'm
hot.
like, okay.
Wait, with other people around?
Yeah, there were like people, it was like, New Year's Eve and busy, packed, people couldn't see.
Like, that's pretty hot.
That's hot. You're probably not going to match that with 3 kids like living in Ohio. Like that's not going to happen again.
Right.
However, what I got from that, and this is just scratching the surface, was, oh, so you like the unexpected. Maybe you have a little bit of a voyeur thing in you, or you like people to watch you, or you like to be watched.
Or to not almost be caught or something.
Yes, to be caught. The fear of being caught is a big one for people.
Really?
So even just those kernels of the 3 most memorable, maybe it was for a lot of people, it's on vacation. Well, it's not, that's why we all love vacation sex. So our sexual DNA, like all the different sex things that we've done, like that will tell us, or just telling about those sex acts is like the DNA of your sex life. It's like what's worked, what hasn't. And the challenge is that typically we don't often match with our partner. And this is why I would love for people to have all of these conversations about sex before you commit, or before you commit would be ideal. Before you get married, because you're like, oh, I want penetration. I want more. I'm kinkier. I want, So the three things are, some people want more romantic, connected sex. Like maybe your partner says the best sex we ever had was when we were staring into each other's eyes and we did that tantric breathing together.
Slow
and then you're
intimate.
like, I liked it from behind when the lights were, and
Right.
and when we were watching porn together. And there's no right answer here. But then how do people with disparate sexual desires and needs come together?
It's so hard.
It's possible.
Okay, it's very possible. It's very hard.
It's just very hard.
It's almost like there's a lot of people that get into a relationship through attraction. They have this instant connection.
Yes.
And they realize after 6 months that they have different love languages.
Yes, the love languages are huge.
And the thing you love to create, maybe you like to share words of affirmation, but your partner doesn't do that in return, and you don't feel the love in return after a period of time when things kind of wear off in the honeymoon phase. You start to be like resentful or whatever it may be because they're not giving you what you want. And it's not their come from. It's not their normal way of being.
Right.
So that's hard. But then you're in a relationship and you love each other and you try to make it work. It sounds like you got to understand each other's sex language.
Yes. So let's talk about that for a minute. So I think every couple, a great thing is to take the love language quiz first. Also, I have something on my site called, it's at sexwithemily.com. It's the yes, no, maybe list. This is a game changer. So I think you take the love language quiz because usually we give love the way we want. We give love the way we want to receive it, and then that can get messy. It's a list that has literally like 80 sex options. So it goes from kissing to cuddling to spanking to watching porn to mutual masturbation, just everything that you've thought of sexually is on this list. And it's a game. You each fill it out. Is it a yes for you? Is it a no? Or is it a maybe? What a great conversation. Because I always try to have hacks for people so they can sort of, because the conversation's so awkward, I always have all these exercises for couples. So just do this together. And then you're like, oh, you want to be spanked. I didn't know that. I've wanted that as well. Or you like to cuddle. We haven't been cuddling. What are your yeses? Let's start with all the yeses. Okay, let's do more of the yeses. What are your maybes? Well, let's just talk about the maybe here for a minute. Why is it a maybe? And it just gets the conversation going. And then you have it all laid out. And you see, like, where can we at least align? And then where can we negotiate?
Right. What about the no's? What if someone's yeses or someone else's no's?
That's going to take a lot of work. It's like the love language. Some of them are easier than others, but if your partner's like acts of service or time, some things are just hard. You're like, oh God, acts of service, can't I just pay someone to do this?
This is what I think. My girl loves acts of service.
I know, that's hard for, I guess I'm speaking for,
it's so much time and energy to make you feel loved through an act. When I normally would never do this myself for
I
anything.
would do it for myself.
Exactly.
I don't even wash my car or whatever, fill the tank with gas.
But I learned the hack from like hiring people to do certain things.
Hire people to do things.
But it's just, and that works, but it's still like, man, it's a full-time job.
It is a full-time job.
Being there for someone's love language if it's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, how great when you match up at least one of them. Because usually we have two.
Yeah.
We have one and then the primary one. So hopefully there's one that matches.
We have a lot of mutual things also, but it's like, if you have your yeses or someone else's no's, that's gonna be really hard.
Yeah. Does everyone, your listeners, you talked about the love languages before? Because it's such a,
it's great.
It's a great, it's great. And that's a great starting point for couples too, because for couples who have never, like, let me tell you something, Lewis. The majority of couples that I hear from, and even individuals, they've never talked about their sex life. Not only that, but they've never even thought about love languages. They're at a standstill. They've never had therapy. And so I think taking a love language quiz, figuring that out can be a great place to start and peel back a layer and be like, oh, you want compliments. Okay.
What's the conversation starter that any person should have with their partner within the first couple months about sex?
Okay.
Maybe you've had sex a few times already. Maybe you're about to have sex. In order to see if this is actually going to work, to give you a chance of being great.
God, in my world,
what's the conversation that's uncomfortable but needed?
Well, you should always talk about protection, and if you're safe and you've been tested, you should do that before you have sex. Just have that conversation. Right. And right now with like COVID, it's like we're all talking about tested. Why don't you just talk about have you been tested? Oh, great, you don't have COVID, and how about STDs? So that's one thing. And then I think it's just about how important is, here's a great question, how important is sex to you? I'm someone who really wants to prioritize pleasure. It's really important to me to stay connected to my partner. I love touch. My love language is touch.
Yeah, me too.
How are you? Yeah, and that's a hard one. If your partner's isn't touch, that's another one that's super challenging
Really
because
hard.
I'm like, if you were not touching often and all the time,
You're not going to feel love.
like,
You're going to be resentful. It's not going to work.
Yeah, they could be buying me gifts and they could be doing acts of
Doesn't
service.
matter.
I don't give a shit, but touch me, hold me. So that's hard. But just to say, they're like, oh no, I don't really like. So if they say, oh, sex is pleasure. What do you mean by that? Or God, and then they get really uncomfortable, or maybe they shame you for talking about it. Or they make you feel bad, or like, what do you mean? I believe that if you have to talk about sex, the relationship's not going to work. And I'm not saying you run away from that person because I can't say this enough, Louis, that most people haven't even talked about it or thought about it. A lot of times it's because people don't have a lot of education or they haven't done research. So maybe their partner says, well, I've heard if we have to talk about it, there's a problem. Lots of people think that. It's just simply not true.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody who's with someone and you really like them, then you could say, okay, well, a lot of people listen to my show together, they'll listen to my podcast or give them some literature, however they learn, and say, the truth is, couples who communicate about sex are actually a lot more satisfied, and when most couples who don't, the sex is going to go down the tubes.
Really, if they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So the more comfortable you are talking about it, the better it's going to be probably.
Listen, the couples who are not having a problem with sex, they're doing great. But when it becomes a problem, which it will if you never talk about it, it takes over the entire relationship. It's kind of like the 80-20 rule for sex. Like if it's a problem, it takes over. I don't know, is that sort of, like
it's like the elephant in the room that no one's talking about, and it's why isn't our connection good and intimacy's not good, but no one's willing to talk about it.
No one's willing to talk about it because they don't know where to start. They don't actually know the problem. And a lot of us, and I actually do hear this from vulva owners or women more often, is that when there's a problem with sex, we blame ourselves. So we think he hasn't initiated sex lately. I gained weight. He saw my stretch marks. I'm not sexy. He's with somebody else. There's something wrong with me. And so therefore, I need to fix it. If I just said, to the partner, or someone said their partner, so lately I feel like we haven't been having sex as much. Is there anything going on? Because I still desire, oh babe, I'm glad you brought it up. I've been so stressed with work. I mean, let's just solve it that way. But we're so afraid of talking about it that we're going to be confirmed what we believe is true, that we are not lovable, which is ultimately the greatest fear on earth, is that we will not be loved and abandoned.
Yeah.
So we don't bring it up. And then we also have shame. Like I should always be having sex all the time and something's wrong with me. And then we also don't have a model of people talking about it, so we don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's not really talked about that much at all, except for you.
Except for me. A few people.
Who
I hope more people are.
I know. Who cheats more in relationships, men or women?
Honestly, I used to think men, all the things, but it's fairly close right now. I think that they're like neck and neck, 50-50.
I think Esther Perel said that just as many women she's hearing in her work are cheating on their husbands as much as men are.
Yeah, and in my unscientific opinion,
they just don't get caught.
Women don't get caught.
How is that?
Because we're just better at it.
How do you sneak? How do you lie? How do you
like
hold back the lie, the guilt, how do you not?
Some people, I just think that women are, I don't know, that is a great question.
It's almost like women can always tell when their man's not.
Always. We have that women's intuition.
But men are
maybe sloppier. I don't know. This is just I don't know how, and women, I don't know if they get away with it, but women, they kind of do. We just cover our tracks. I don't know. But I know a lot of women, this is again, just friends or listeners, but it is 50-50, and I can't answer why men get caught more than women. This is, again, I'd love to see a study on this, but this is my hunch that men maybe, it's always about the phone these days. Although I was watching, what's it called, the show that was in the 50s about advertising? Oh my God. Mad Men. And I remember there was a scene where he was cheating and she got the phone bill. Like back in the 50s, and it was like all these numbers she didn't know. Yeah. So it's always been the phone. Yeah. But now the phone can pop up on the iPad and the messages and all the things.
Maybe the man's not checking the woman's phone as much as the woman's checking the man's phone. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of I honestly think that women, okay, again, there are men like this too, all genders, but women were really good at like reading, like we can read your facial expressions, or we're intuitive, or what do you mean you didn't come up, or what, you're, I don't know. We're like the scientists
constantly questioning it, yeah.
And I think that it does show a little bit that and these are also, I don't know how conclusive these studies are, but when women cheat, like women leave the relationship, they're more likely to already have someone, that men don't often leave until their female partner pushes it to end, like in a marriage or something.
Interesting.
Yeah, I hate to talk in like stereotypes like this because I think it's a case-by-case basis, but I do think that cheating is, common for everybody, and it's not necessarily because the sex isn't great. Again, there's a lot of other reasons why people cheat. And what I talk about a lot is that what I would love to see is, I think monogamy works for so many people. Monogamy is great. Till death do us part, great, we're together forever. But for many people, it just isn't. And I know, and people think, oh, that's so crazy. If my partner was sleeping with someone else, I'd go insane. Well, it's not for you. But for some people, they don't think it's okay, or they don't know how it would work. But I know a lot of people in really long-term open relationships, and it doesn't mean just go bang someone. Honey, I'm not coming home tonight. I met someone really great at the bar. It doesn't work like that. It's like, okay, so these are let's go back to the yes, no, maybe. Maybe I really want to be spanked or tied up. And you're like, I don't feel great about that. I grew up in a home where there was a lot of, I'm like, okay, how would you feel if once a week or once a month, once a quarter, like I think everyone needs we'll talk about that business plan for your sex life, but once a quarter, I went out and I did this thing. And then what do you want fulfilled? And you just sort of and the people I know in open relationships, and there's like swingers, and there's threesomes, and there's just all different things. They practice this rigorous communication, and they talk about everything. And they get jealous, but then they sort of learn to sort of transcend that because something happens called compersion.
What's that?
Compersion is when I actually get pleasure because I love you so much that you had pleasure.
No way. Really?
Absolutely. This is what happens.
So it's like transcending jealousy into compersion.
Compersion.
Never heard of that.
Your pleasure. I love you so much, and I trust you, and I'm glad you went and got spanked tonight. I'm glad you went and
That's like a whole nother elevated human right there.
Not even. Yeah.
How does someone I feel like on both sides, men and women, it'd be hard for men to allow that to happen to their female partner. And I think the fear of, I won't speak in every woman, but I think the fear of abandonment for a lot of women is high. And if you're going to go off and have this crazy wild experience with some younger or hotter, whatever girl, like, will you still want to be with me? Is it safe and secure?
That happens for many people, but I should also clarify that when these open relationships work, they don't start open. You are on a really solid place. I have so many people call into my show and say, we've been together 10 years and we've opened it up. In the last 5 years, we've been swinging. Most people that I know or that call in, that my listeners, they had a really solid foundation and they talked about it for months. They have rules, they have boundaries, like there's no kissing, there's no sleepovers. If you're with somebody, it's only once. And since you have a contract,
is that the way it works for most?
There's no most. I hear everything. Some people want the person that they want the same person.
Really?
Some people don't. It can't be anyone in our town. It can only be when you're traveling. It can only be our neighbor and nobody else. There's no kissing. You can never sleep over. You can only sleep over, but then don't come home because, it's.
Wow.
But you might, and when you start at an open relationship journey, you get to decide. It can be messy at the beginning, but you're like, oh, that didn't feel good to me. But you are, like I said, you both want this for whatever reason you came to. Because we want more variety, or actually turns me on to see you with another person. Like and you'd be surprised, probably your neighbors. There's people that you wouldn't believe likely are into
something,
it.
Yeah.
A lot of men like watching their female partners with another. So many, Lewis. And I'll bet you a lot of your listeners are like, yeah, I'm into it. It's called cuckolding. It's called cuckolding. And it's
cuckolding.
And it's I'm telling you, people all over the country, they call into my show. And Midwest and all over. Yep. I'm from Michigan. I have a lot of listeners who are like, cuckolding is the act of a man, it's typically a man, who gets his primary turn on, or one of his main turn ons is watching his wife or his partner have sex with another man. I know. Not for me either.
It's
not
just
for
like
you.
this in their DNA. It's like, this is a turn on for me.
There's a lot of different reasons. So I hear it all. The thing about my show is like, no, zero judgment. I've heard everything. I'm open as long as it's safe and consensual.
Yeah.
But I think that's so a lot, going back to why we cheat, it's like maybe we have a deep desire and either we're too afraid to bring it up or we brought it up and our partner was like, no, I will never
allow that.
I will never allow it. And then you're like, well, this is a part of my core erotic blueprint. This is my erotic theme. This is a really main source of my arousal. And you're saying no.
No, you're shutting it down.
And it's really hard. And then.
So how do you live with that? If you want to be with someone, you love this person, you want to create a family and a life together, you want to live by, you want to make them happy, but you also want to make yourself happy. How do you do both?
Well, there's so many different pieces of the puzzle.
And is it okay to shut down a desire?
Yes, if you're okay with it.
To be with someone else, and you say, okay, I'm going to accept this. It's not acceptable in this relationship.
All the time.
So I'm going to kill this part of me. And
is it a kill or just like a let go?
Let go, this desire?
Yeah, no, because the kill is like, oh, it was a deep part of me. But if it's like, you know what, if I never have sex with another person outdoors,
right,
I could probably live with that because this person is all these other things. But it's usually not that black and white. Yeah, the richness of the connection and the love and
the relationship and what we've created.
Yeah,
it's not worth ruining.
It's not worth ruining
for this fantasy once a year or something, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, but things can work if I just want people to know what is possible. And again, none of this is for everybody, but it's not prescriptive, but monogamy isn't for everybody. That's why half the people cheat. That's why half the marriages end in divorce. Even though we're delaying marriage and getting married later. And sex is often an underlying, like if you don't still have that connection and chemistry, even couples are going to go through it. Like I think as long as you're, it's not always going to be great. Relationships look like this, especially long-term relationships. But the couples I know that make it work, they always come back to they still are having sex. Like they're
really,
because typically maybe sometimes there's one person who doesn't want it, as like I said, but they make it happen, or they don't want to have as much sex, but they figure it out because they know that is the glue. And people will tell you differently, like, oh, we're best friends. We've decided we never need to have sex again, and we're just going to be love our family, love our house. If they're not having sex, eventually that will catch up with them and they will be miserable.
Or one person will want that desire, something like that.
They'll want it. We are sexual beings. People are having sex. I mean, I have like an 80-year-old call me on the show the other night, and he's got 3 women, and who she grew up. I mean, it's a different world right now. My mother watched my MasterClass, and she's 77, and she's like, Emily, watching your MasterClass, I was really inspired. I actually shaved my leg. She's with my stepdad for 35 years. Wow. She's like, I realized I've been kind of lazy during quarantine and I shaved my legs. I'm like, Mom, I'm so glad you were inspired, because we always need to remember that's, and they're very happy. They have a wonderful relationship, but he's 85, she's 70, but it still is important because then otherwise we're roommates.
What's the
That's a lot.
What's the craziest story you've heard in the last 15 years of doing this work, where it shocked you? You're like, no, this is, like, you've heard everything, nothing's off limits. You're welcoming people sharing crazy stuff all the time to make it more normalized. So what is the 1 or 2 things that come to mind?
Oh, gosh.
That was like, wow, this person.
I get asked this question, and then whenever I get asked it, I say I really need a better answer for it, because to me, nothing is crazy. But I can tell you something that happened, and again, this happened recently. Do you mean like a crazy sex act? Or like, well, here's something. Okay, so there's a couple. This woman called into my show, and she said she had a crush. Because what I love about what I do is because people can call in, and then they call back, and they're like, well, hey, this worked, this didn't work. So like we're all, like the community, we're all in it together, sort of helping each other. So she called in, she said, I don't know what to do. I have a crush on my my ex-husband's wife.
A woman on the woman.
She's like, we have this connection. We spend a lot of time together because she's essentially raising my kids.
Wow.
She's been with my husband for years.
We're at the park together with my kids. We're this.
And I think she feels it too.
That is crazy.
And she said, and I even told my husband, because she's remarried. She's like, I even told my husband that we have a thing, and he said, he was kind of okay, but like thought it would be, So then she calls back a few months later. She calls back a few months later and says, you'll never believe what's happening. And this happened during quarantine. She said,
don't tell me they both got divorced and now they're together.
We're in a throuple. The girlfriend left her ex-husband, and now the 3 of them, the husband, the wife and then the ex-wife. Because she said to me on the first call, she said...
The ex-husband's wife left the husband.
To go for his ex-wife. So the two ex-wives are now together and the husband. And it was this might sound like,
the new husband, not the ex-husband.
Yes, the new husband. The ex-husband's alone and sad.
Oh my gosh.
He's alone and sad.
No way.
And the other crazy thing is that the woman was like, I feel this woman that I have a crush on, she's married to my ex, and this is a whole nother show, but she's like, my ex-husband is an asshole or a jerk, everyone thinks that, but he's doing the same things to her. And
they're almost bonded together because of the
it's
experience,
like trauma bonding.
Experience.
Because people do, listen, we're
This
all
is
going to
crazy.
repeat patterns if we don't work on ourselves.
We don't heal it.
We don't heal it. You got to heal the trauma. That's just going to keep going. So he was like he was controlling. He was OCD, judgmental, all the things.
So she would complain to the other girl
Yeah.
about what the ex-husband was doing to her. And they were like, yeah, he did that to me. And
Yeah.
they were connecting. And they were like, oh.
It was over a period of, exactly. Or just, it was over a period of a few years. So, I mean, at the end, I'm like, yeah, then the ex-husband needs to know to go do some work, And anyway, that was a pretty entertaining, that was a
Wow.
pretty unique
And
scenario.
the new husband was cool with the
Yeah, see,
throuple.
this is what I'm telling you, Louis, that people are
Were they
more
having a-
open to things that you think.
Were the women having a relationship by themselves?
No, the man sometimes joins, but they all have an
crazy.
arrangement. They sleep in the same bed.
This is crazy.
This is not the first call I've gotten. Not about the throuple as a whole, new thing.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I know, it sounds, that was pretty like, we're like following along with her journey. And I'm like, she called back 6 months later and this is what happened. So I'm trying to think of what I hear but to me, Louis, everything is like, I've heard everything. I don't think that any people, what I love is that people feel safe to call me and it's like, it's all okay as long as it's, people have certain, okay, so here's someone called in. This isn't crazy, but you just might find this interesting. This was last night. Her husband has a haircutting fetish. A fetish is something different than a fantasy or a kink that's required for arousal. Like people have a latex fetish or a foot fetish. Like it's almost like
So you need the fetish in order to be aroused, or you won't
it's a
be sexually
requirement.
aroused
I will
without
not
it.
be at my best arousal state unless there is. I can't.
The
I can
fetish.
massage your feet. I got to massage your feet. They have to be somehow involved in
the
our
experience.
arousal.
Otherwise, maybe you'll be turned on, but not fully turned on.
Not fully turned on. That's a fetish. That's like and you could be like, oh, I kind of like feet. Sometimes we do that. So that's the difference. So this woman called in. She's been with her husband for 17 years. I believe she was in Ohio. And she said...
OH.
Yeah, LH, yeah.
That's where I'm from.
I know. Right, I'm from Michigan. Right,
know.
exactly. So she said, haircut fetish. And the problem is we're in quarantine. And I'm not getting my hair cut as much. And my hair was really short. And now it's growing. And I like it. And my sisters like it. But I love my husband so much. What do I do? And it was just interesting. I had heard that one once before. But like she's like, the hair... She said, but I see it.
He cuts it.
Well, usually someone else cuts it. But he comes and she goes, and I see he's never as turned on as he is when I'm getting a haircut.
Oh my gosh. So she can't grow her hair out.
She can't grow hair. She's like, what do you... I'm like, buy wigs. I said, why don't you go buy a bunch of wigs? And you could also take it to the next place and be like, not only am I blonde tonight in this long hair, but I'm also going to dress a part. I'm going to become my alter ego. Like, these are things that couples do to like it's kind of hot to wear a wig. I once had a woman tell me she was working at a department store. I think I was like somewhere like in New York buying something. I mean, because everybody, as you can imagine, opens up when they hear what I do. They're like, oh, well, let me tell you something. And she was probably 65 years old at Bloomingdale's, working the makeup counter, and I was buying something, and I said, I'm going out to a conference or something. She said, what do you do? I said, oh, I'm a sex doctor, sex therapist. She said, honey, I got the best advice for you. I said, what? Because I always want to know. She's like, wear a wig. And I was like, And what she was saying is, we all crave variety. We all want something different. It's going to happen after a while. If I give you this chicken every single night for dinner, you'd be like, can we please order a pizza? And so if every night, and then you just sort of surprise your partner and you're wearing something different and you sort of plan to role play and all this might sound kind of silly or, oh, we would laugh. Fine, laugh. Sex is fun and funny. And then you get into a different... Maybe some couples or people have called in and said, yeah, I took your advice, I dressed as something different, and I actually was able to channel like my insecurities I usually have. I felt different, I felt sexier, I felt like I could take control because I wasn't me, and my partner could sort of connect with me on a different level. And so these are just I have so many of these different hacks. It's different for everyone, but just don't give up on it.
Don't give up. What do you about someone's? What about if someone's struggling with orgasm? How do we not force an
Which
orgasm?
gender? Women or men?
Both. Yeah.
Okay.
What if both are like, I'm just not able to have an orgasm anymore.
Yeah.
It's harder and harder, and no matter what I try, are they overthinking it?
Well,
Is it
I don't think that
stress?
sex should be all about orgasm. We place way too much emphasis on orgasm. I mean, it's important. But what I've found is there's a lot of different reasons why we can't orgasm. And that's also, there's like 20 different reasons. It could be you're on medication, you're stressed out, you only can orgasm when you're alone, but when with your partner, you haven't showed them what you like yet. You have pain. There's a lot of different reasons.
You have shame.
You have shame. You have pain and shame. And so so if you can't orgasm, which now, can't orgasm or it is different for the
Was
genders.
blocked,
So we could
maybe,
break
yeah.
it down. I mean, some women orgasm, I don't think there's anyone who can't have I think we can always have an orgasm, but we just haven't gotten there yet. But very few people can't anymore. Maybe they can't during penetration, but I have to say this every day, and people are shocked that only 20% of women orgasm during penetration.
Crazy.
20%. And it's because your penis is nowhere near clitoris, and there's not enough arousal and foreplay, and there's not enough touching,
Right.
or maybe my love language is words, and I need you to tell me all these things about me, and I need you to slowly kiss my neck and warm me up. But when we just go right for penetration, no way will I have an orgasm. And most women orgasm from mouths and fingers and hands and toys, not a penis. So, and then for men who can't orgasm, it's typically other things. It's usually... Do you want to do you want me to go off on it all?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, this is
Go for it.
men can't orgasm because
Is it loss of testosterone? Is it stress?
everything. Testosterone, stress. As men get older, they lose testosterone. But it can also be because they're used to masturbating to porn. So when they're alone, they use a certain grip.
If they don't have the same
Tighter
tension.
Grip. Yeah. Doesn't
Doesn't
orgasm.
work.
Yeah. But you can figure it. There's hacks to everything, Lewis. You can hack your sex life.
What is mindful masturbation?
Mindful masturbation. Mindful masturbation is a great practice for discovery and learning to slow everything down.
Is it something you do yourself or with someone else?
You could do it either way. That's mutual. I love mutual. How about a mutual mindful masturbation?
There you
Mutual
go.
masturbation is the
3M.
next thing. There you go. Mindful
Forward
masturbation.
With Morse.
What did you say?
The fourth M with Emily
Yes,
Morse.
exactly. Right. There you go. Write it down. So what I love about mindful masturbation is you actually go into it with the goal of not orgasming. The goal is to explore. The goal is to take time. You take half hour, whatever it is. You lock the door. You know the kids aren't coming in, your roommate, and you just get curious. And you set the atmosphere like you're on a date with yourself. Whatever it is that gets you in the mood, you light candles, you play music, and you're just like, I'm going to get curious about my body and what feels good to me. Because we have so many nerve endings on our body that we don't even we all know the primary erogenous zones, but there's like the nape of your neck, your inner thigh, your, just inner elbow, like for many women. Like there's just for men. Yeah, like right here, like this part can feel really good to touch. And then you just sort of get curious and you breathe there's a lot of breath work and you breathe. I mean, breath and masturbation. That's why I would say meditate, masturbate, manifest. But there's a lot of things that are breathing and that are so important with sex. So you just kind of breathe and you just sort of pay attention to all the sensations on your body. You essentially tease yourself or edge yourself. And then you just sort of, the goal of it is to be mindful and curious about what feels good to you. Now, I'm cool if you have orgasms and you go for it. But the great thing about it is that a lot of us just assume that the way we orgasm now is the only way. Like, I only had an orgasm this way, and I'm never going to try anything else. And this is a great way to discover, like, can I have a nipple orgasm? How does it feel?
What's a
prostate
nipple
orgasm?
What's a nipple orgasm?
A nipple-gasm, very common. But a lot of women don't even know they can
It's
have it.
just having like pleasure
lot
on
of
the
sensation,
nipples,
yeah.
and you have
Use
an
some
orgasm.
lube. Yeah.
Zero arousal, zero touching
Yeah.
in the genital.
Yep. In fact, there's the sensory the same region of your brain. It's called the sensory cortex. The genital. What is it called? The my God, my brain, the something sensory cortex of your brain. So your clitoris and your nipple, we haven't even said clitoris yet. Your clitoris and your nipples are both send brainwave patterns to the same part of the brain. So your arousal is stimulated this part of the brain. So it is similar to the nipples and the clitoris. So sometimes you could do both at the same time. But women don't often, they think it's not possible. They think they can only have one orgasm. Majority of women can be multi-orgasmic.
Really?
Yeah.
How many other places can women have an orgasm? Nipple?
Nipple. Is this a lot for your show? Are you going to cut this out?
We've never talked about this stuff, but where else?
Dude, well, this is good.
Yeah, opening up.
Listen, people need to know. Listen, my whole mission is to get people to prioritize their pleasure and liberate the conversation around sex. So, this is it. We need more pleasure. Let's talk about it. Nipple orgasm. Yes, I mean, there's some women, and they might even know this, but then their partner maybe, they never explored on their own during mindful masturbation. And use some lube. Just get curious about it. And maybe after you already have an orgasm, then your nipples will be more sensitive, and then you can have another orgasm. I mean, I'm not saying it's for every woman, but they're pretty common. There's a nipple orgasm. There is an internal orgasm, an external orgasm. There are...
Wait, what's the difference between internal and external?
Well, some people call it the G-spot.
Oh, you mean gotcha.
Internal, sorry.
Like internal,
but for men, prostate. The prostate is, I'm telling you, for men, you can
have an orgasm through the prostate?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
Very sensitive, huh?
Yes. No, Lewis, it's like a lot of men like, I know it's for exiting, makes me gay. Like a sex act does not make you gay. What happens is the prostate's kind of like the male G-spot, and it's an internal, there's kind of like the same way you find the internal, well, we could get back to the G-spot, but for many men, using a finger, using a toy, and just exploring there, they have the most intense orgasms.
Really?
Yes. You didn't, I should have brought you an anal toy. Oh.
Okay, there you go.
So yeah, and so what I love is in the last 15 years, like what I've seen is it used to be like straight men were like, nope, and then now they're kind of like, oh, I hear what you're saying.
I'm curious a little bit,
yeah, and it can help men who have premature ejaculation or men who can't orgasm. Like that's always going to do it. And the men that I know that have experienced it, they're just like, it's next level orgasm. It blows their mind.
Okay.
So your partner can use yeah.
What's more of a challenge for most men from your understanding in your show and experience? Premature ejaculation or unable to ejaculate or taste?
Delayed ejaculation.
Delayed ejaculation.
That's what we call it.
What happens? What's more frequent?
I would say I hear about premature ejaculation more often.
What is premature? Is this in a minute?
Minute or less.
A minute or less?
Yep.
I don't even know how you do that.
Yeah, good. So this isn't your
That's
problem.
crazy.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Especially
for
with
men.
the same person for years?
Sucks.
No.
Yeah, dude, I was with someone, I wonder if this is why I do what I do, but when, like a very long time ago, 20 years ago, before I did this, because this was my like second career, I was with someone who was like premature ejaculator for like 2 years. Yeah, it's very common.
Every couple minutes.
Yeah,
within the first
less than
couple
2
minutes.
minutes.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Every time for 2 years.
I know. I was focused on other things. I wasn't
crazy.
where I'm now. I mean, I was like, I didn't know.
That's crazy.
Dude. Well, so it's very common. So what was your question about it? Why do men, or is it, or why, or how do they?
What is more common, premature or delayed?
Premature is more common.
Really?
But I hear more and more delayed lately too. And delayed's trickier because they just don't know why. But sometimes they can when they're. You can solve all of it. You can get through all of it. We can get into all of it if you want. We have a lot of good guides. The strategy for which one?
For premature, what's the strategy that a man and a woman could take on to support it? Delaying 5 to 10, 15 minutes or longer.
There's a few things, and we have a great downloadable on our site that's like a guide to this. It's called the Guide to Edging. And this goes back to mindful masturbation for a minute. Because for many men, so what I would tell men who are premature ejaculators, I would say, do some mindful masturbation, meaning you need to start to understand your ejaculatory control. So when you're masturbating, because usually men who are premature ejaculators don't have the same problem when they're alone. So one thing I say is to edge yourself, meaning...
When you feel it, hold it back.
Hold it back. You get to a 10. So 10's orgasm, 1 is I'm sleeping, whatever. Then you get to an 8, and then you bring it back down. And then you keep doing that so you get to sort of start to understand...
It's like training for your orgasm.
It's literally training. Men could do strengths in their pelvic floor. Men can also do their Kegels. If you do come too quickly or you get there before your partner, a lot of times it's anxiety. It's a pattern. So everything is patterning. our response, our react in our life, like how we go through life, our reactions to things, our traumas. It's all patterns. The same thing happens with your ejaculation. So if you're a guy who maybe it was just one time, it was the first time you had sex, you got there too quick. It might now you're so nervous the next time you have sex, it keeps happening. We got to break the pattern.
Or it's the other way. It does. You hold it for an hour.
Delayed ejaculation
because you're embarrassed or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
You're afraid someone's going to walk in and you don't ejaculate. So this is all also work dealing with your anxiety, working on like what is it? Are you on medications? You know what's happening. But if you do come to circle back to that too quickly, just take the attention off yourself and give it to your partner. Yeah. I'm sure, like if you're with a woman, she'd love you to go down on her.
Focus on her.
But when we take it off of ourselves and we can we're giving, then you're like, oh, I can go again, or you know.
Right. What's the biggest challenge you've faced in the last 15 years sexually that you've had to overcome? For
me, what have I?
Yeah, personally, the thing you've had to overcome the most that you struggle with.
Oh God,
sexually.
I struggled with everything. No, I didn't. I was like, okay, I'll tell you. How much time do we have, Lewis? You know, they say research is me search.
Research
I
is
say
research.
That. Like I believe that we get into, like you started this podcast, right? To learn from
of course,
people, right?
Of course.
And I found myself not that satisfied with sex, very like confused. I was like, well, everyone's always saying when you have sex, it's going to be amazing. And I thought everyone was having orgasms all the time, and I wasn't. And so when I started the podcast, I was not a sex expert. I just was curious, and I invited a bunch of people over and interviewed them about their sex life. And I came to find out that most women weren't orgasming during penetration, and there was like, you know, all this stuff. So what have I learned is I have multiple orgasms. So these are like my challenge. I could have so many orgasms.
Before you couldn't.
I could have one.
Right. But now you
So I
can
could
have
have many.
multiple.
Yeah. I never had one with a partner, and now I still...
Never had one with a partner?
No. Sorry. I wasn't as much, maybe just a few times, but during penetration, it wasn't as easy, let's just say.
Sure.
It was, but now I know exactly what I need to do and how to communicate it. So I think I got what I've learned is I'm better at everything, communicating with my partners. I used to just think that sex was about pleasing men. Like I thought it was about my partner's pleasure, and if they were satisfied, it didn't matter if I was satisfied. And I've learned all about my body. I've done everything that I tell people to do. I've tried myself and I've worked through. So just being more communicative, more open, more experiential. I won't yuck your yum, you know. Someone won't yuck my yum. That's what we say in sex a lot. Like if I'm like, oh, I really like this. If my partner's like, I really want to be tied up, I won't be like, ew. You know, I'd be like, oh, okay, tell me more about that. Because then we already have so much shame and maybe trauma going into sex that we have to just be supportive, loving partners. So I think I'm a much better lover, like giver and receiver. I understand. No one knows anatomy. No one teaches us about anything. You know, so I
have to guess and figure it out along the way.
Right. I mean, sex education in America, it's only 17 states require it to be medically accurate, if they teach it at all.
I think I saw like one video when I was in middle school or something, and that was it.
Yeah, and it was probably horrifying. Like, don't get someone pregnant, don't get an STD, have a nice life.
Here's how to wear, put a condom on.
Yeah. That's
that was
fun.
it. It's like, okay, figure it out.
But what if they taught pleasure? What if they taught consent?
Wow.
It's a game changer.
How does a woman, for women who maybe struggle having one orgasm, how do they have multiple orgasms? If they're thinking, this is never going to happen for me, never happened for you, but then you learn how to do it. What's the process? Is it psychological? It's
everything.
Healing?
Sex is always everything. It's always like psychological and emotional, and you need good space and hormones. Like what time of month is it? You know, that's the other thing that we don't. And I cover so much of this. I mean, I've done, as you know, like probably like you, thousands and thousands of podcasts on all of these subjects, but it's like, so multiple orgasms for women. Here's the great news, is that women have the clitoris, right? And the clitoris has 8,000 nerve endings, twice that of a penis. Okay? So just take that in from it. And the only reason it exists is for pleasure.
No.
Yes.
It doesn't exist for any other reason.
No other reason.
To be pleased.
To be pleased. Well, maybe to give us an incentive. Maybe it was like, you know, evolutionary speaking, so we would be into sex, so we could have pleasure and an orgasm. But also, the clitoris isn't just about the little like bud at the opening of the vaginal opening. It actually has legs called crura that extend behind internally. So they're sort of like where the labia is, they're sort of behind the labia internally. So for a woman to have an orgasm, typically it's external, right? Like, so they're going to use their fingers, or they're going to use a toy, or their partner's going to do something to them, go down on them, and that's a great way to have a first orgasm. And so our refractory period is a lot quicker than men. The refractory period means time that you can get up and go again. Like for many men,
Right.
they ejaculate and they're like,
You're
I'm
done.
out.
You're tired.
Out.
All the energy's gone.
Done. Like tomorrow, 24-hour
Right.
refractory, like maybe Saturday. For women, if we just knowing this, I love this because I just love to give women permission, and nothing again, everyone's different, but what I've found is that it's possible. And so then maybe you have an orgasm, whether you're with yourself or a partner, and then you just continue to breathe, and maybe you for some women, after they have a external or clitoral orgasm, they start to become, their nerve endings inside it becomes more engorged, right? More swollen. With blood, their labia, their clitoris, internally, we start to swell because of the erectile tissues and everything just start to swell, and you get more aroused. But maybe it hurts to still cut. You just need a beat. So then you start to, maybe this is when you go play with the nipples, or you start to play with your labia, and you know, use lube, use your fingers, use a toy. There is nothing shameful about toys. It's just, if you think about it, if you have 8,000 nerve endings, like why not, in all these pleasure zones on our body, why not just play with temperature, hot, cold, vibration? So anyway, maybe bringing in a toy or touching yourself in a different area, because once you've kind of lit that match of the clitoris, of the clitoral thing, everything else is more aroused, the blood's flowing, you're like turned on. And so maybe it's a matter of like rubbing your labia, bringing in a toy, putting a finger inside, and then you're just breathing. You're breathing through the experience, and you're not already checked out, because we talk about patterning. A lot of women assume like, I'm done, I'm out, let's go to dinner. But if you give yourself time and permission to see what's possible, it's like a game changer. Like I have people all the time. I'd say everyone who's worked for me, like I've had so many interns and people over the years.
And they're like, I'm having multiple orgasms.
Oh yeah, they still text. Like, guess what? I had a vaginal. Like, yeah, I mean, that's because I like get 50 pounds of sex toys in the office too a week, and I'm like, your job is to try this toy. But they come in and they ask me questions. I really want to empower women. We don't talk, because we don't. Well, first off, not only don't we talk to our partners about it, but we don't even talk to our friends about it. Women,
women don't talk about it to each other?
Barely. They're like, I had sex, I didn't have sex. But now I think it's changing. What I hope is that it's changing, and that more women are talking about masturbation. But if you think about it, like American Pie, like all the movies growing up, men are masturbating. It's like a thing that they do, but women, good women, like don't. Or we grew up in a religion where it was shamed. You're not supposed to masturbate. So, but masturbation is the key to figuring out your body, what feels good. Like whether it's mindful or you hit it and quit it, I don't care how you do it, but masturbation is just important whether you're in a relationship or out of a relationship, because that's what I learned in 15 years. I masturbated, but I didn't really like do the discovery process. And now I just sort of, I get it, I know. Like we are all walking around in these incredible bodies with so much possibility, and we just scratch the surface.
Right.
We don't even know. No one tells us.
Why do you think religions or parents have made masturbation a bad thing for kids and people?
I mean, religion, that's just because, I think control over women's bodies and energy, and it should only be for procreation. And I mean, it goes back, I think so much about sex and religion are tied up. And you would know more than I would, because I know you grew up in, I don't know what you're, I do know that it's just like, it's control. So saying that you can only have sex in a way that can have more kids that are going to benefit the church, or that, that sex is sinful and wrong. And I think if you go back to like Adam and Eve, like Eve was a temptress, like she made him bite the apple, and that's her fault, right? So I feel like a lot of it goes back to shaming women and our bodies, and the goddess, and there's a lot of reasons why. Now, parents, though, I could talk about. We don't have to get into religion. But parents, what I can tell you is it's because they don't know either. So
they don't understand it, so they're scared of it, or they're...
Yeah, they think it's wrong, or, oh, God, my kids, when I try to talk to my 15-year-old about sex, they just go, oh, Mom, I don't want to hear it. But, like, that's because we don't do it. We don't ever talk about it. But there's a few countries, like in the Netherlands, not many, where they actually start teaching consent and sex ed when kids are 5. They're not saying go out and have sex. Here's what you do. It's like your body, your temple, consent. Here's the body parts. They even teach them like in 3rd grade, if you start to get feelings for somebody of the opposite sex, they talk about it. They talk about orgasm.
They normalize it.
They normalize it.
Yeah. They don't
We
make
don't
it this
normalize
like
it.
scary thing.
We make it really scary. And so our parents of kids they don't understand it either. But I've had a lot of great breakthroughs. A lot of my listeners are like, I finally did it. I talked to my daughter. I talked to my son. It was weird, but because it's okay for a parent to say, you know what? My parents didn't talk to me about it. This conversation is uncomfortable for me too. And I'm still discovering and learning, but I want to tell you, like, here's how your body works. Or I want to listen to this podcast, read this book together. Let's learn together. It's not shameful. You know, it just, we're setting kids up not for success. We're not setting them up for success.
Yeah.
Success.
What's one thing you wish men would understand about their female partner more, and one thing you wish women would understand about if they're in a female-male relationship?
It's a good question.
That would help them thrive better and be more compassionate and loving. And
such a good question. Okay, one thing. I think that I want to tell men that she comes first. There's 2 things that popped in my head, I'll tell you.
Literally, she comes first?
Literally, she comes first. There was a wonderful book written by Dr. Ian Kerner. I think it just had its 20-year anniversary. And it's called She Comes First. Because men are going to orgasm.
And then they're done.
They're done.
Yeah.
Women are, think of it this way. Women are slow cookers and men are frying pans. You get aroused. You're ready to go. Women have more of a responsive desire. We need to be warmed up. You got to heat us up. Foreplay. Foreplay is not just like a light suggestion. It's actually a requirement for many women. Again, we're all different, but we want to, whether it's even words or I needed a massage or a bath for, like, we have to take a while to get warmed up. So I would say that figure out, so that's just, I mean, she comes first is because it's going to come back to you. Like, the more that you understand her body, it's going to come back. Yeah. She's not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to please you. And I think just the way you look at this is where I can say that we are very different. The way we get aroused is different for men and women. So I would say the one thing I want you to know is that you got to focus on,
her first.
Yeah. I think I would, yeah. I mean, that's, what else you got to understand?
It would make things a lot better, yeah.
And
okay.
just, focus on her first and then find out, like, what turns her on and talk about it. Okay,
and then for women?
I think for women, what do men need from
want
women?
and need more from women that you're hearing they're not getting?
I think that men need more attention. They want you to, this is, again, we're talking heterosexual relationships.
Yes.
They want to know that you're into sex. They want you to initiate. They want you to lead sometimes. And they want you to be, I guess I'm just thinking about men who come to me. Usually it's about their penis. They're worried about their penis size. They're going through all the things. And then they're worried about, men worry so much about their penis. Yes.
Really?
Yes. And I'm telling you that women do not, it's because I remember what I said, not about your penis. If you're a good lover and you do all these things, it's really not about that. So I think that what men need is, I think they want to know that their partner's into sex, that she's not just doing it to get it over with, that she's actually enthusiastic and that she cares about his pleasure and that sometimes maybe she'll, initiate or have ideas about it. Or what do you think? I'm trying to think. It's a great question because mostly it's about men worried about themselves, but they need attention from women and enthusiasm and participation.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I feel pretty good in my relationship right now. I'm trying to think of past relationships that weren't working sexually, maybe, but and I've also not been like married in a long term after a few years in a relationship, so I'm not sure what that looks like 10 years down the road. Once you've had kids and what the needs are, I feel like they're going to shift a lot at that point.
Yeah, but that's why I want people to get ahead of it, because if talking about sex becomes just like you're talking about where are we going on our summer vacation, how are we going to raise our kids, what religion, what are our values, sex becomes part of it, so it's not awkward. It's just like, oh, baby, we haven't had sex in a while, let's do, it just becomes part of everything. Like when you're not feeling like you're taking care of yourself nutritionally, you're like, I got to get better, I got to eat more greens, So I feel like we could get ahead of it if we covered it. We don't wait until there's a crisis.
And is there anything we shouldn't say when we're courting someone in the first few weeks of dating them? Is there anything we should not talk about when it comes to sex? Should we not say in the first night, this is my sexual fantasy. Are you either in or you out?
Depends on the partner. I think that sometimes, so where we're at now and today in 2020, I think that since I'm telling you that most people have never talked about sex and they probably have some judgment around it and shame and it's hard for them or trauma, that if you just met someone and you're out for a first date and you're like, I just want to be clear that this is my fantasy and I'm really into bondage. Are you down? Now, that might, so it could go two ways. It might be great because if you're with someone who freaks out and she runs out the door.
It's good.
Listen, she's saving you a lot of time. If you brought it up, it's probably because that's something you really need. But I think like everything, it's like some people have like overshare, they do too much. I just think baby steps is okay. So I think it's okay to say, are you someone do you like pleasure? Do you like sex? Do you, but I don't know that you lead, just like, I don't think on the first date I should get into all my like trauma, my childhood stuff. Like, let's get to, it's not like, you know what I'm saying? We want to, babe, like everything. You got to like get to know somebody.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it wouldn't be, but I think mostly we don't even talk about it. This is the problem, is that I don't know what you shouldn't say. I hate to like tell people, I don't know, I think.
You got to feel it out.
Be honest.
Yeah, you got to feel
it out. But don't wait too long. I think that right when you have sex with someone is the time to start talking about it. So how was that? What do you think? Like what?
Would you like more of? Do you want?
Yeah,
it
seemed like it seemed like when we were having sex, you were about to orgasm. But did you? I'm not sure. Tell me what you like, or what feels good to you. Did you like when I was doing that? Not in the bedroom. This is like the next morning at breakfast.
Not right afterwards.
How was that for you? I thought it was so hot when you were doing this thing, and that felt like it felt good. Did that feel good? I mean, just.
But not in the bed right at 5 minutes afterwards.
No, I prefer.
Someone's gonna get hurt or emotionally.
I think so. I think they do. Smart. They do. I mean, I know so, but I mean, it depends. If you're in a long-term, solid place, you guys get to decide. I'm just giving you what I've seen's worked over all these years.
We've got an amazing show, Sex with Emily, that talks about all these things and has lots of great questions from listeners calling in. You also have a MasterClass.
MasterClass, yeah.
That just came out that people need to get.
So yeah, we have a couples course coming out in February.
What's it called?
I don't know what it's called yet, but it's really like all these conversation starters for couples. It's exercises for couples to, wherever you're at. It's a lot of things I'm talking about, like to set the spark. Like it's first uncovering your roadblocks. Like what are the 3 areas where you're not communicating? Clearing those out, and then I walk you through how to communicate about sex. It's just had all these different steps in it. It's like my best stuff in there. I'm very excited about it. I don't have a title for you. It is. But also on my site right now, which we have a bunch of downloadables, which is quizzes, everything. Great guides.
Tools.
Yeah.
All free, or stuff's free at your site, sexwithemily.com. The podcast is Sex with Emily. The MasterClass, what's the MasterClass called?
It's called Emily Morse Teaches Sex and Communication.
Oh, let's bring it.
And then I have a show on SiriusXM 5 nights a week, which is separate.
You're a machine. You're doing a lot.
I'm a fucking machine. 5 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. It's the only call-in show about sex. I mean, about anything.
On Sirius, and then you have a podcast that's different. Yeah. Wow.
I'm busy.
Books,
it might
everything.
be different when this comes. I mean, I don't know when this comes out.
But yeah.
Renegotiating my contract's up, so I'm like
trying to figure it out. Yeah. But lots of things over at sexwithemily.com. You can get access to that. I got a couple final questions for you.
Okay, and people can also email me with questions. Feedback. Can
they get on your show by asking questions somewhere?
Yeah, they can call in.
They
call into my Sirius show, and then now we also do it. So just call in or email me. They call into Sirius, and then we can put that. Sometimes we put those into the podcast. Sometimes they just go to my website, and you'll see how you do it. But they can call or email or social media. I get hundreds of questions a day.
That's
everywhere.
That's fun.
Super fun.
That's fun.
I love my job.
What do you wish more people asked you that they don't ask you?
About sex? That's a good question. What do I wish?
What's the thing people should be asking more of that they're not?
That's a great way to put it. I think that people should be asking about. I wish that people got more curious. Sometimes we just put. People always call in like my partner, they're blaming others, and I wish that people got more curious.
Look in the mirror first.
Yeah, I wish people got more curious about themselves, and they weren't trying to fix other people, but they were.
He won't do this. She doesn't do this. They don't do this. It's like, take a look in the mirror.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I wish we started there. And I wish that people just thought more about their own pleasure, because if we all understand our bodies, we're much better lovers to each other.
That's good. This question is called the 3 truths. So I ask everyone at the end this question. So it's a hypothetical question. Imagine it's your last day on earth many years away from now. You get to live as long as you want to live, but then at one point you got to turn the lights out and you got to go to the next place. And you've accomplished everything you want to accomplish. You've transformed millions of lives sexually in their relationships. You've done all the books, the podcasts, everything you want to do. It's happened. But for whatever reason, you've got to take all of your content with you. All of your written word, audio, video, it has to go to the next place. So no one has access to any more of this information. None of it. It's gone. Hypothetical, okay?
Okay.
But you get to leave behind 3 things you know to be true from the lessons you've learned in life. 3 lessons that you would share with the world based on your experience. What would you say are those 3 things for you?
About my work, the 3 things are...
Just about life, like 3 lessons you've learned.
Just in life?
Yeah, what are the 3 biggest lessons you've learned that you would want to leave behind?
This is hard. Wherever you go, there you are. Can you want me to give you like things like that? Like, that's not my own. Wait, is this about... Wait, you're saying it's about me?
No,
I just
any
feel like
lessons
that's
you've
the
learned.
thing. Like
Yeah.
you try to pull like a geographic or move around that like lessons in your life, like wherever you
Yeah.
are, we are the same, you know, figure out your own stuff where you're at.
Yeah.
Mindfulness works, meditation works. Like, don't fuck around, just do it. To me, that is a game changer, and that so much. Your mind will control you if you don't learn to understand your mind.
That's true. That's powerful. Okay, number 3.
I would just be able to prioritize their pleasure. Really, like pleasure. Pleasure is your birthright, and we all deserve to have pleasure. And we prioritize so many other things: work, family, home, and usually we put ourselves last. So
That's a good one. I've never heard that one. Prioritize your pleasure.
yeah, that's my mission statement.
Is it really?
Yeah,
That's great.
pleasure positive. Prioritize your pleasure. I'm all about pleasure because we don't, especially now, we need more pleasure, and we're like, well, I'll get to that once I finish this, and then I deserve sex, or then I deserve. I mean, it can be pleasure however you look at it, but I would say prioritize your pleasure, and yeah, because it matters, and if we don't have that, then we're just working and dead. We're just dead. We're dead. But that one should be first.
That should be the first one. Yeah, yeah.
Well, don't you feel good when you have more pleasure in your life, whatever that is?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like for you? You know, you just.
Yeah, and I think of just joy in general, like having
Joy.
a joyful life is pleasure for me. Doesn't have to be sexual, but that's nice too.
I'm not just talking about, because you said not just sex, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I could give you my 3 sex lessons, but those I think I already did.
Sure. This is great though. One final question for you, Emily. Before I ask it, I want to acknowledge you for a moment for the mission you're on. I think so many people are suffering from
They are.
a lack of sex education, a lack of sexual healing, sexual shame, sexual misunderstanding, and just hurt and pain around sex.
So
And
much.
the fact that you've dedicated your life to this for 15 years and you show up every week for men and women and all human beings to help them solve this problem is such a massive gift. And so even though this isn't something that we talk about a lot on the podcast, I thought it was necessary to have you here and really help people. Even if this helps one person listening, it's worth it. From unlocking their shame or their pain to having some type of healing. And I know there's a famous song, Sexual Healing, but it's it's important for people that have been locked in a prison of their sexual shame. So I acknowledge you for making the uncomfortable more comfortable.
Right? It wasn't so bad.
For being able to communicate it in ways that people can understand it, for being able to create tools and trainings and free things and podcasts and shows and classes so people can consume it. And I think it's great that you're doing it. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Louis.
Of course.
Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah.
super proud about you and all the work you're doing too. People love you. You are inspiring so many people, and you do the same exact stuff, but if around everything. I love the way you interview too. It's just very listenable, and there's always you're patient. You're good at this stuff.
I appreciate
You're
it.
good at this.
I appreciate it.
But can I say one more thing? You could add
Go
this
ahead,
or
yeah.
not.
I have one more
is that
question,
you just
too.
thought me about? You were saying about hopefully this will help one person. I'm going to say that I think that since we don't look at this part, I believe that when we heal ourselves sexually, whatever that looks like, we will heal so many other parts of our life. Sometimes we think that there's other things wrong, but we are holding on to stuff. And once we kind of get into it, and that's why the MasterClass is great for that, or my site, whatever, podcast, you'll realize that like this was the problem all along. But since no one's pointing it out, they're like, I should change my diet, I should, you're like, what about what's your relationship to yourself and your body and your self-image? And once you heal that, more pleasure.
That's good, yeah. Final question for you. What's your definition of greatness?
Oh, my definition of greatness is be kind and work hard and stick with your beliefs, surround yourself with good people, communicate your mission, give as much as you receive. In fact, give more than you receive. That's a greatness, good person.
There you go. Emily Morse, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
It's good to see you.
If you're looking for more greatness in your life, make sure to check out this video right here. And also check out our free PDF, The 3 Secrets to Unlock the Power of Your Mind to help you change your life. Download it right here.
I want to be the most understanding, compassionate, loving partner I can be, who doesn't inhibit or limit my partner, who supports them,